What up, schmucks? So the Morbius trailer is here, and I was kind of excited for it. But then after I watched it, I felt a little let down, except for that stinger at the end of the trailer. And we're going to talk about that. I have some things to say. But before we get there, we're going to run through a couple Easter eggs and some references, and then just some ideas about where the story could be headed. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. In the comics, Michael Morbius was a genius who had a blood disease, and that made him very frail. Think of that one prick from SpongeBob.
I was born with glass bones and paper skin. Every morning I break my legs, and every afternoon I break my arms. At night, I lie awake in agony until my heart attacks put me to sleep. Oh, no! No! Ow.
Michael ended up finding a cure for that disease, but it infected him with what he called pseudo-vampirism. Pretty much made him a vampire. He had kind of all the powers and abilities, and I really can't remember if he had any of the weaknesses. I imagine he did, or maybe he didn't. I don't fucking care, and I don't want to Google it. Anyway, so Morbius wants a cure, and he breaks into Kurt Connor's lab, who is the Lizard, but so does Spider-Man for his own reasons, and thus begins a hero-nemesis relationship that I've never been a fan of. I've never really liked Morbius that much, and I've always just kind of seen him as a not as great Spider-Man villain, but that's just me. So, with his comic origins out of the way, let's get to the trailer and its references and its Easter eggs, and then after that we'll get to what we're really here for. When the trailer opens, we see young Morbius being a frail little shit, and then we see older Morbius still being a frail little shit. I scanned this shot of what looks like New York. I was kind of hoping to see the Oscorp Tower or anything like that, but I can't see it. I can't find it. I'm pretty sure we'll get stuff like that throughout the movie, references to a greater world, as this movie is supposed to be taking place in the same world as Venom did, and maybe it's in the MCU. We'll talk about that later. We see shots of Morbius tending to children in hospitals, probably to make him a character we can see be redeemed after he slaughters tons of people. But I could also see him testing cures for himself on other children who might have the same blood disease or a form of it, and it going terribly wrong. I don't know, we'll just have to see how dark this movie is willing to go. We see Martine Bancroft, who in the comics is Michael Morbius' wife, who he meets in university, or has his time as a doctor, I don't remember. This movie could establish her as his wife from the get-go. Maybe she's an assistant or a co-worker, and he falls in love with her, I'm not sure. But from these shots right here, it's pretty clear that they, at the very least, work together. Alright, we're gonna skip through all this boring, dull shit, because none of it is worth talking about. We get a lot of vampire stuff, which to me is Sony going, oh, well, I guess we should actually show shit in our trailers, after they released the first trailer for Venom, and they showed literally nothing. Anywho, so we get super strength, he's hanging out with bats, there's a weird flamey ball, what the fuck? There's echolocation with, ew, what the fuck? Do you see those bat ears? What the fuck? That's disgusting! Look at those things, that's creepy as shit, what the hell? Oh, look, there's some super speed, and what the fuck? Now he's purple smoke? What the fuck is going on here? There also seems to be an extended fight scene on a cargo ship. This could either be a return trip to the US after the Batcave incident we see earlier in the trailer, or maybe it's people trying to relocate Morbius after he becomes a fucking vampire. Either one is my guess. We see our villains for the movie. Firstly, we see Simon Stroud, who in the comics is a CIA agent who hunts down Man-Wolf and Morbius, and here he's played by Tyrese Gibson, and he has a fucking robot arm, which he doesn't have in the comics. And then we see Matt Smith as Loxias Crown. I'm not super familiar with this character, but I do remember him as a Spider-Man villain who I believe has tangled with Morbius in the past. Crown is a sort of vampire, and in the movie I imagine he'll be a full-on vampire who's probably hunting Morbius for whatever reason. And then we get a final shot of Morbius becoming full-on Morbius, a living vampire. And I think it looks great. I love the red eyes, the teeth, the blue skin. It looks fantastic. I just really hope he wears that ridiculous costume. Okay, so now we're going to talk about that cameo and why everybody is really excited for this movie, because quite frankly, why else would anybody be? So there are two main instances of this movie reaching for a Spider-Man connection, and I lost my shit over one of them, and I think you know the one. Firstly, we see this shot of graffiti that labels Spider-Man a murderer, and people on the internet have had a fucking field day with this shit, but I have a theory about it. So obviously, this is the screenshot that Insomniac used to reveal the Raimi suit was coming to Spider-Man PS4, and people said how it wasn't accurate since Tom Holland's Spider-Man will be shared by both the MCU and Sony's Marvel Universe, and he doesn't have that suit. But what if he does? My theory about this is a little in-depth. It's definitely not right. It's 100% wrong. But I do want to share it because I think it's fucking hilarious. But that's going to get its own video because it would take too long to explain. It's either that or it's just a random artist's take on Spider-Man in world, or it's a serious editing mistake. What the fuck do I know? And then we get the reference that made everybody cheer, and that was the appearance of Michael Keaton. Now, it isn't 100% clear if that is Adrian Toomes, but considering that he's wearing the exact same prison outfit that he was in the end of Spider-Man Homecoming, I think it's fair to assume he is. But what does this all mean? Well, since Morbius was a dying scientist before, it's unlikely he was one of Scorpion's pals who he mentioned in that end credits scene, or a person that Adrian did business with, but it is clear that Toomes knows Morbius from somewhere. He could know Morbius personally, or he could just know him since he's pretty famous. He got a Nobel Prize, which you saw in the trailer. The immediate assumption is that Morbius is going to join the Sinister Six, but I'm kind of wary of that. Spider-Man isn't in this movie, so it'd be weird for Morbius to just want to kill a random kid, but I also have a few ideas on how this can work. Morbius is arrested, but then he breaks out of prison, and we see him in an orange jumpsuit, so I think it's fair to assume that he will break out of prison at one point. So what I'm thinking is that when he does, he takes Adrian Toomes and Matt Gargan with him, and is now technically associated with them, so he'll accompany them on their quest against Spider-Man. But it seems unlikely, since Morbius seems to be meeting up with Toomes and isn't already with him. Then again, anything can work, and anything can be out of context. Spider-Man is in this movie, and he'll be the one to bring Morbius in. So following that, Morbius breaks out of prison, but this time he wants revenge against Spider-Man and he joins the Sinister Six. Simple, probably very unlikely, but it could work. Since the world thinks Spider-Man is a villain, as evident by the graffiti, Morbius may team with the Sinister Six to kill Spider-Man and get on the world's good side. I think this is the least likely one, but I still really like it. So in the comics, Morbius' main objective and his main drive is to find a cure for his vampire disease, since he'd rather be a sad made-of-glass prick than Edward from Twilight. So maybe he thinks drinking Spider-Man's super blood can save him, like Harry Osborn in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I think this could work, as Morbius' reasoning to go after Spidey would be interesting and unique enough, and I also would really like to see a horrific, monstrous character like this go after family-friendly and boyish Peter Parker. This just isn't for the Sinister Six, and is instead here to semi-link this movie to the MCU Spider-Man movies, and I feel like this is the most likely one, and is unfortunately the least interesting. But no matter what, Michael Keaton's handsome face is the only reason I intend to watch this movie, because honestly, it just doesn't intrigue me that much. But what did you think of the Morbius trailer? Does it look good? Does it look mad? Does it look better than Venom? You let me know in the comments below. Yeah, that'll do it. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video, which is going to be the Black Widow trailer breakdown, which can hopefully be up by Thursday. We'll see what happens. Anyway, again, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.